Yes, so again, I would maybe start off with the distinction that the policy making is making, or is most of the time is actually following the theory. Again, that would in general. So, and I will actually add on with two exceptions that confirm this rule. But if we think back, so it has been recently in the 20th century, unfortunately, what I deem to be a failed attempt on the part of the economics to pursue a quantitative kind of science. And so it was actually based on, advancing some hypothesis, which was then followed up with some empirical observations. And then from that, you extrapolated a theory in general. But in the process, you were also including some major assumptions about, your modeling. And also you did, by doing so, you were extrapolating from a finite kind of sampling of the population. But that aside, I think if we come back to this, what I said earlier, I think, the theory was always preceding the policy making. If you look in history and if you look at some major steps, so there was like Plato in the Republic, he already advanced some notions of the required skills, the techne in Greek. So in order to have a stable kind of society, I think, for individuals to enjoy a stable society. If we move forward, then we had maybe in the mid-19th century, we had the classical economists, with Ricardo and the Adam Smith, 1776, of course, on the Wealth of Nations, whereby mostly both economists actually were advancing the notions of the benefits of a free market and free trade. And then at the beginning of the 19th century, again, you had another theory which was developed by the Austrian school, again, epitomized by a very important Austrian economist, Friedrich Hayek. And actually, he was, designing a theory, and the first one actually to establish a theoretical concepts about the business cycle, about capital formation, about even a monetary theory. And what was interesting about this was also the psychology that was incorporated into his, theory, right? He advanced the importance of motivation, entrepreneurial spirit, as those were features that actually could be determining the outcome of society, if not the prosperity of that society. And that was actually that theory, that liberal theory was actually endorsed by the Chicago School of Economics in the 70s, advanced by Milton Friedman. And those were the foundations for the policies. Again, you see that sequence, first the theory and then the policy making and the engineering, for, the President Reagan and Thatcher in the UK. Now, I said, that maybe there are two exceptions to that rule. And so these were two major crisis situations. So the first one was in the 1930s, where you had the largest kind of financial collapse or crisis that we've ever faced in history, and whereby Maynard Keynes actually advanced this general theory on money. And so that was, and where he was actually extolling the virtues of deficit spending by the government. So this is actually the first time that you had actually the reverse, although Keynes was actually going back and forward between designing theory and policymaking. But you had, in the face of this major crisis, you had the policymaking that was actually advancing the theory. Now, the second element that we have is in our current crisis is the fact that we have this multiple crisis, be it climate, health pandemic, or even the one about the financial market instability. I think, we have this crisis moment where we actually have to acknowledge that we run out of policy, or at least, some tools or some instruments. And then as we see, we are designing and we are writing policy, we're engineering policy that is actually preceding theory, right? So this is another kind of occasion, because we have been overtaken by the facts, right? And the theory could not keep up with the facts, and as such, we have to, try and keep up with this policy making.